Thanks very much for joining today. Again, Aaron Petrillo. I'm the co-lead for technical assistance for the integration of IDEA data, or CIID. And I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar focused on data stewardship, particularly pertains to data integration. During the webinar today, you'll hear from two colleagues, Boyd and Shauna Crane, as well as several of your colleagues in some states. And in the call today, we hope that you'll be able to take away, number one, a better understanding of the role of data stewards within the context of data governance, and certainly within the context of data integration, and how that role plays a critical role within the data integration. During the call, as I mentioned, you'll hear from some of your state colleagues, some of the ways that they support data in their roles within the states, as well as the specific activities and responsibilities of data stewards, and as it relates to data integration. As always, we encourage you to submit as many questions or comments that you may have within the chat box, as well as to the CIID TA email box, which we'll distribute at the end of the session here. And if anything you hear on today's call or that you would like to learn more about or would be interested in receiving potential support or learning more from your own colleagues, please reach out and let us know. We'd love to connect with you. I want to go over to my colleague, Shauna Crane.
I'd like to take care of just a few housekeeping items before we go any further. The first is to mention that this is being recorded and will be available after the webinar through the CIID website. And we're muting all of the participants so that we don't get feedback from your phones as we are recording, but we do want your participation today. We're interested in receiving your comments and questions that may come in during the presentation. In order to submit them, please type in the chat box, which is located in the right-hand column of the screen that you're using. If the text box or chat box isn't open, please look at the top right. You should see an icon that says chat, and that will open it for you individually. Be sure to send your chat message to all panelists or all participants, and that way we will be able to all see the questions. That is the default. You can also send private messages if you need to. Monitoring that chat box throughout the webinar, and we'll respond to as many questions as we can. We're also going to be putting a few polling questions up during the webinar to get understanding of who you are and other pieces of information that might help our conversation, and I'll explain more about that when we get closer to them. Our today is 4 items. We're going to give you a brief description of data governance and how data stewards fit into this picture. We're also going to have a presentation from New Hampshire about the role of data stewards, and another by West Virginia about capacity building and support for data stewards. And we'd like to thank both of these folks for helping us out. They've got some good information to share. And finally, we're going to get specific about what CIID does and data stewards as it applies to integration. We're looking forward to these presentations and hope that you will engage as you can. To start by doing a first poll. Our administrator will set the poll up. You can see it there on the right side. Please respond by clicking on one of the choices there, and then be sure and click Submit, which is at the bottom right of the column, so that your answers can be put in. If you don't click Submit, it won't enter. We're going just a few seconds to take care of that. If you'd all answer the poll question, we'd appreciate it. This is to get a sense of who is on the call and what to do for you. We'll wait just seconds for you to answer the polling question, and remember that you need to click Submit. We will not receive your answer. We appreciate you taking the time to do that. If you could, Vicki, that would be great. To step forward and talk about data stewards as part of data governance, and we're going to turn the time over to Tiffany Boyd to do that. Tiffany, over to you.
Thank you, Donna. So we mentioned earlier, our focus today is really on data stewards. However, we felt it would be a little bit remiss if we didn't talk about larger context of data governance. Both DAISY and the SLDS State Support Team have extensive resources around data governance, so we don't really want to go into a whole lot of depth, but we want to touch on it briefly about what data governance is, some central principles around data governance, and then some of the benefits and outcomes. So what is governance? Really, there are two main components, which is organizational process, and the second is structure. And what data governance does is it can help define responsibilities for data and also for continuous data quality improvement within an agency. Governance is really a collaborative effort, and it involves the systematic set of policies, roles, responsibilities, and procedures. So in short, it's really about both people and processes. And data take a variety of different forms. Regardless of what form it takes, there really are some central principles that apply kind of across the board. And the first is that data governance is really about managing data agency-wide. It goes beyond a single program area or business unit, and it really requires a lot of collaboration and a lot of coordination. Every program that touches the data, whether it's through collection or reporting, they are represented in this process. And every data element has an owner, or in some cases may have owners, co-owners, but someone is responsible for every data element. This is really about building and supporting consistency, and can be with kind processes, with data definitions across various systems and business rules, but applied consistently. Council governance really relies on program areas taking ownership, meaning that it's not just an information technology initiative. It's not just the responsibility of one or two people, but it really is spread across the agency. Governance helps provide the roles and relationships and really clearly define those. Things work more smoothly. And very often, an agency may have one individual who is responsible for the coordination effort. Sometimes that may be an official title or official role. In other cases, it may be more a portion of somebody's job, but often having somebody coordinate it is an important piece of that. Benefits of data governance, and how can that help an SEA? Well, it helps to create a common vision around data use, in particular around the use of data at an agency level to support agency goals or strategic initiatives. And the structures and the processes that are implemented as part of governance really can help improve the overall understanding of what data exists in the agency. Oftentimes, it may be data collected by various different program areas, and governance helps track that so that folks are actually aware of what data may be being collected. I spoke about consistency in the previous slide, and again, one of the benefits is increasing consistency, reducing the redundancy of data that's collected across programs. And the nature of data governance really can help increase communication, and it can support collaboration across program areas, certainly around data, but also that can also be a stepping stone to increase communication around other initiatives as well. And really, it can lead to reduced staff burden. An overview of data governance, we really want to now hone in and focus on data stewardship. And to help us with that, I'd like to introduce Gretchen Teetrell, who has the role of data stewards in New Hampshire. And Gretchen is with the Bureau of Data Management in New Hampshire, and she is also the EdFacts coordinator. And in that role, she helps coordinate the efforts of data stewards as part of the Data Management Committee. So, Gretchen?
Thank you much. Thanks for inviting me to talk about the role of data stewards in New Hampshire. Again, my name is Gretchen Teetrell, and I am from beautiful New Hampshire. Cold here. New Hampshire has approximately 3 data stewards that attend monthly data management committee meetings, and they represent all of the bureaus within the New Hampshire Department of Education. If it isn't able to attend the meeting, it's expected that they'll send a backup meeting so that we can make sure that we have representation from each program area. Shortly after each meeting, minutes are sent to all of the members, including our bureau directors and the deputy commissioner. Minutes and all working documents are saved in a shared location where members can review the agendas and past topics and presentations. Important role in data quality and data management. Our stewards are program area experts who come to the meetings prepared with knowledge that they're responsible for understanding the data required by their program area and the business rules around the data. They're the institutional knowledge about their own data. For example, data stewards bring data changes and data definition updates, as well as business rule updates for their specific bureau to the Data Management Committee meetings. They are department-wide data quality and consistency by understanding how data changes will affect their program area as well as other program areas. In the scope of understanding so that there's no silos. See misuse, errors in the data, or inconsistency in how others are using the data, they bring it to the Data Management Committee's attention. One expectation is to bring back shared knowledge to their program area, help inform their peers about the appropriate use of data. So for example, when the poverty formula changed, data stewards were expected to share it with their program area so that they could discuss how this would affect their program among their coworkers. With regard to data and data systems during the Data Management Committee meetings ensures the transfer of institutional knowledge. Presentations are sometimes given by subject matter experts to update the committee on the role and activities of the bureaus. So for example, this past year, New Hampshire switched a new Smarter Balanced Assessment, as I'm sure many other states did as well. And a subject matter expert from the Assessment Bureau came and talked about the new assessment. She shared the data that was available on our district and school profiles. Our Career and Technical Education Bureau come and give an overview of their career and tech ed centers and the data that they collect. By information, the data stewards understand how changes can affect their programs, and also it gives them a platform to ask questions. The benefit to the Data Management Committee meetings is the data stewards get out of their silos. Often in our meetings, the data stewards stay after the Data Management Committee meetings to discuss other topics with peer data stewards. So it's great to get to know other people that maybe they wouldn't normally get to see. Each Data Management Committee meeting starts with the same topic, including policy updates and database changes. So it's expected that each data steward will notify the committee of any expected changes to data elements or policies. And one common topic involves changes to the organizations of our schools and districts. So those changes can affect all of the bureaus. Data sessions allow the data stewards to discover changes that affect other bureaus in ways that weren't anticipated. So, for example, the new community eligibility program required all of our bureaus to look at how that data is used. It affected more bureaus than anticipated. So collaboration just provides a better understanding of how data and how to use it. It improves the data quality and the consistency of its use. Another aspect of our data stewards work is to participate in subcommittees. Subcommittees are assigned to handle in-depth issues that require discussion and more time than a monthly meeting permits. These subcommittees may meet for a 6-month period on a single topic. Typically, monthly meetings are only an hour, and we know we can't accomplish everything, so we create the subcommittees as needed, and they handle the in-depth issues. They also pull in people who may not be data stewards. And these goals stay on the agenda until the subcommittee completes their work, and updates are provided to the Data Management Committee at each of the meetings. To update policy are promoted to the DOE cabinet, and data stewards don't make policy. So an example of a committee is our data security subgroup. We did a data access form to track access to our data systems. The group also recommended updates to the computer use and technology policy. We wanted to share with you a few lessons learned over the years. We're still learning and trying to improve the process, but here are some of the things that we've learned along the way. Leadership is critical to success. Working with data stewards is an ongoing effort that needs a lot of attention. It's easy for people to say that they're busy and that they can't come to a meeting, but it's critical to get department leadership to convey the importance of the committee and encourage attendance. Schedule of meetings is also important. Sometimes we don't have many agenda items. Sometimes we don't even have any at all, just our regular agenda items, but we still meet, and we always end up filling the hour. You'd be surprised at how much people can talk about all the different things that are happening. It's important to have regular meetings and to be on a schedule. Meetings are the third Thursday of every month, and we always have it in the same room and at the same time. So it works out really great. People know when it's coming, so they can rearrange their schedules. And data stewards to speak up, because you never know what might be helpful to another bureau. Using subcommittees to tackle the tough issue has also been very successful. And finally, close the circle by keeping leadership informed. And that's it.
We really appreciate you taking the time to share how that works in New Hampshire. It sounds like you've got a good system. What we would like to do now is take just a moment with you, and if you have any questions for Gretchen about what she talked about. We've put a question here: what other roles and responsibilities do data stewards have in your agency? We'd be interested in having you write those in the chat box to the group if you have any other roles or responsibilities that did not mention. And if you have any questions for Gretchen, please enter them there. We're watching the chat, and we'll be able to have her answer them. The questions are for you to answer if you want the roles and responsibilities that data stewards have in your particular agency. And you can put your response in the chat box so that everyone can see them, or if you have a different question to ask Gretchen based on what she talked about, that would be good. You, Gretchen, do you have established governance policies that are in writing that you work from or that you've developed? And if so, are they shareable? Gretchen, question?
Okay, unmute, and it kept remuting. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. We don't have an established governance policy written down that I'm we just have kind of what our goals are on the top of each agenda that we send out each month, so I'd be happy to share that with you, but I think you're probably looking for something a little bit more in-depth than that. But I'll do some double checking. We have some older documents that I haven't referred to in a while that may be helpful, and I'd be share that.
Excellent. Thank you, Gretchen. We've got a few comments from participants saying that many of the data stewards have other roles, and data stewardship is a add-on role for them. One question from Amanda: how do data stewards do the interpretation of applicable statutes and regulations governing the release of data to internal staff from their systems? Gretchen, that's something you can address?
Let me just read that. So the release of data, let me think, so interpretation of applicable statutes and regulations governing the release of data to internal staff from systems. So, before we release, make sure that we go through our leadership, and typically it comes from there. So, in the data management committee, we actually we interpret applicable statutes all the time, and I feel like I'm really answering your question.
Gretchen, Amanda added to the question. She says, I'm thinking privacy and data use
I see.
type situations.
Okay, let me think about that for a second. So in the subgroups that discuss that, but I can definitely do some checking and get back to you on that.
Great follow-up. That will be good. Okay, we would like to move to the next section of the webinar, where we're going to have Georgia Hughes Webb and her associate Jeff Pitchford speak to us about what they do in West Virginia around the role and support of data stewards. Georgia is the data governance manager in West Virginia, and her associate is Jeff Pitchford. We'll turn time over to you, Georgia. Go ahead.
Thank you much. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Great, fabulous. My name is Georgia Hughes Webb. I'm the data governance manager at the West Virginia Department of Education. And we're going to start our presentation with a little of our data stewards and what their roles and responsibilities are. And then Jeff, who's our data governance specialist, is going to talk a little bit about where else we want to go in terms of building capacity and supporting our data stewards. Structurally, our data governance and data steward structure is very similar to New Hampshire's. Our data stewards at the department are our program office representatives. So they're knowledgeable about our data needs for data collection and reporting. Our data stewards have to be willing and able to participate in our meetings and our task teams. The steward task teams in West Virginia are very similar to the subcommittees in New Hampshire. And our data stewards are often appointed by the director, or as I like to say, they're invited to participate in the data steward process by their program office directors. We in West Virginia also think of district staff and school staff as data stewards because they are responsible for entering data into our statewide centralized data system. However, at the department, we really have the most influence over our colleagues here in our building and can provide them with the most support because we're right here and we can be very hands-on. So talking about how we support data stewards, but we just wanted to give a little overview of what roles our data stewards play. Again, I think you'll see that they're very similar to our peers in New Hampshire. Our data stewards are expected to be subject matter experts, liaisons, and advocates. We want them to understand and represent the needs of their offices and their constituents. Also need to be able to communicate back to those constituencies about data governance updates and policies and processes and requirements. They also define our data elements in our business rules and plan for and monitor data collections. Are responsible for equality and consistency in the data by examining reports and providing feedback and making sure all the business rules are correct, and to ensure the appropriate interpretation and use of data, not just at WVDE, but also with our LEAs as well. Oftentimes there are changes in reporting requirements or definitions, and we rely on our data stewards, who are the experts, to keep us up to date about that. Our task teams often look at problems of practice and provide feedback and guidance on that we then take to the Data Governance Committee and then to the Data Policy Committee if needed. So how is WVDE working to support data stewardship? At our department, what we are seeing is a transition from our data management ownership of the data to program office ownership of the data. And we're really experiencing some growing pains. So what we're trying to do is to empower our data stewards and their program offices to really own their data. For the past couple of decades, since we've had a centralized data system here at the department, really the data management, the data office has owned all the data. And that's not always the best to take, we find, because our data stewards really are the experts. So we're empowering them to own their data by encouraging them to speak up and tell us what the rules are and what they should be, to identify where there are errors and work with us to make sure that errors are corrected. Also encouraging a team-based approach. No person is an island unto themselves, and no steward can do everything. So we really want our data stewards to know that we're all in this together. We're all working together as a team. We actually just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with Renee, who is our data steward for the Office of Special Education, and we told her that we're her team, we're her backup. She doesn't have to try and find the data and know where it is all by herself. We all have to work together to make sure that we know what we need to be reporting, to make sure that it's right, and to make sure that it meets deadlines and requirements. We're also seeing our data stewards facilitate discussions across offices because we, like New Hampshire has experienced, we've often had silos. And often in the past, it's been really hard for program offices to get data from the data system. We've had kind of a sea change lately in the past few years at the department with a really more collaborative approach to making sure that everybody has eyes and hands on data that needs it. Facilitate those discussions across offices and identify where changes in one office might affect use of data in another office. We're working to create tools and resources that are useful for data stewards and our offices and our users in the field. In particular, we've launched a new reporting system, ZoomWV and ZoomWV for educators, which you'll see there in bullet 5. And we're seeking program office input to make sure that we get it right. In addition to designing new data collection tools and new data collection instructions, which has been a big help, we're also seeking feedback from our data stewards to make sure that our reporting system gets it right and puts the information out there in a way that is useful to our users at the State Department and at our districts and schools. At this point, although we feel like we've had some success here, we know there are still things that we want to do in order to mitigate all those growing pains that we're experiencing and to make sure that our data stewards are set up for success because, like with other states, data stewardship is an add-on responsibility. So my colleague Jeff is going to talk a little bit now about where we need to go, where we've found some success, and where we're still having challenges.
Hello, my name is Jeff Pitchford. I'm the Data Governance Specialist at the West Virginia Department of Education, and you've heard powerful words through these presentations about empowering, understanding, tools, resources, and through our data stewards and through ZoomWV, we are trying to empower ownership and understanding of these resources through these provided tools. But it can't stop there. So it must be asked, what else can we do to help our data stewards? So three words that I explained is training, reverence, and being role specific. At WE, the Data Office has trained a lot of our stakeholders through RESA, which is our Regional Education Services Agencies, where we continue to that. And that is connected to our 55 districts We have 8 of these RESAs throughout the state, and we have hacked with all of these agencies and many of our schools, but learning that this info is not trickling to everyone in our districts. So I want to focus our training in use and the functionality of our data system. Great, but it'll be relevant to increase capacity. We want to waste the time of our stakeholders or the people that are reporting to our stakeholders, which is to the importance of a co-host office and or role-specific training or more informational sessions about critical data issues that our program groups are facing. So it's really coming down to be about specific training and what's needed to be accomplished in that program group. We have some success because we have tried to be specific and strive to train to the importance of being advocates to our data. So success are we seeing? Because WE is starting to see some success, and it's being led by our stewards, and they're understanding that they must become advocates of data. And we this is data, and we moved away from the antiquated thoughts of our stakeholders gaining access through many models or modes to get there. So the data is becoming, we're going to be responsible about the policies, the procedures, and the tools, and led through being responsible to protect our children's data. There's been groups that we've seen success of. The first is our special education program office and our CIID groups that have really taken ownership of their data, and it's by the data stewards being proactive, being engaging their constituents to a great light shining on bad data. And the importance of good data because of funding and different other reasons. Data being corrected faster, and also in actually even being corrected, is a desire for them to get it corrected because they want to make good decisions. They want to make right decisions. They want to have good data to make decisions for the children of West Virginia. Stewards and task teams, there's thoughtful feedback, and it's been a unique perspective because it sparked some great discussion. It's leading to things to not be stagnated and allow things to move forward, because as we come into these groups, discussion is starting to say, well, we've dealt with this problem, we've dealt with this situation, and through that, things don't get bogged down in our meetings because it allows for great conversation and importance of having good data. When it's exposed, you tend to work to find a solution quicker because you don't want to become an issue. And finding solutions, and they're working together to find the solutions. Still having issues, and we're not to the finish line yet. It's probably an endless marathon, maybe the way to look at it, because I don't believe it'll ever end, but we have to look at it that way, that it is an endless marathon. And it's a race because there's been challenges, and we're facing many challenges. Stewards are not as involved as we would like, and we see this through the passing off sometimes of responsibilities. Sometimes we see it as that's someone else's job or someone else is going to take care of it. And we're going to start to address that through trying to do more informational training. So we're going to continue to show, and well, it's not really, the bad data is going to be seen. That is going to be exposed, and that affects other areas of fun to other things. Thought or mentality of being locked down through things going through the data office, the process has got to end, and we have to do that by exposing what data governance is supposed to do, what is our job, what is our role, reaching out through the proper channels, and we're going to do that in other areas and different ways of really exposing what our purpose is and our responsibility is through the constituent needs. And we want this to lead to a better understanding of our constituents' needs. We still are very office-based, specific of our stewards, and we are many more reactive, proactive, and has led to many issues, some issues. but it's starting to be broken down and starting to be worked through as we go through, because they're starting to understand, as they understand the big picture, start to understand all the other different offices, they see they're facing some of the same issues, and allows them to work through it. And the last one is time constraints, and a lot of times it's, can we get it all done? This is so much to do, and it can kind of become very modeling, but we're seeing that as we bring these task teams together and remind them of the importance of clean data and what we want to manage your data. We want to manage your data and make it better so that you can make better decisions for the children of West Virginia.
Thank you. And Georgia, thank you as well. Those are great things to share about West Virginia. We'd like to open it up for some questions now. As we did before, we'll do this through chat. Please answer these questions if you can for your state. What other ways does your agency support data stewards? And what other ways can data stewards increase their knowledge and skills to be more effective in their role? We'd love to hear from you through the chat. If you have other questions that you'd like Georgia or Jeff to respond to, put them in the chat as well. We will open for a minute or so to be able to do that. We've Carol Torres to Georgia and Jeff. Can you speak about your data change management process? Do the data stewards own and drive data changes?
Carol, that is actually our ideal. We do have 4 forms that our data stewards complete and fill out if they need to change data elements or new elements. Our data governance team works to support our data stewards to make sure we have all the information we need. With that process, our data stewards submit those change requests, and our data governance team takes them to our data management office. And we talk with our data management team and say, okay, here's a new application we need to collect data. Here are changes we need to make to the data system. Can we achieve these goals? And so when our data management office has a chance to review it, they'll provide feedback. And typically, our colleagues in the data management office are wonderful. They can do anything we need them to. It's really fantastic. And then we'll go back to the data stewards and say, okay, yes, the data management office says this is fine, so we'll present it to the data governance committee, which, if you'll remember our pyramid structure, it's kind of the one second from the top. We'll have the data stewards come to a data governance committee meeting and explain why the changes are needed. If it's a new data element that we need to add to the student data system, we are required to put it on public comment for 60 days. So we actually engage the program offices and the data stewards in developing those proposals as well. So we're really trying to make sure that our data stewards can own all of those.
Georgia. Carol added an additional question. Do you have documentation about process or data change forms that you can share?
I'd be happy to share our forms with you.
So we'll work together to find a way to share this with the participants of the teleconference, the webinar. And thank you. Again, we'd like to hear your information about other ways your agencies support data stewards. And please feel free to put those in the chat box. They'll be part of the recording, and we'll be able to share those that way. We'd like to move on to the next section now, where we talk about data stewards specifically as it relates to integration. Tiffany Boyd is going to address this. She is on the CIID staff and has lots of experience as an EdFax coordinator and has done data collection and reporting at the state level. So she'll be a good resource for us, and we'll turn the time over to her. Tiffany?
Great, Shauna. So last spring, CIID did a data integration assessment. I think it was the SEAs that had completed that. And one of the things that we learned during that during integration assessment, or looking at the results of that, is a lot of states have separate systems for IDA or some of their IDA data. And there is a great interest in integrating those systems. And so we want to take a little bit of time just talking about what role stewards may play during that integration process if your state is looking to integrate. And a lot of the bullets that are on this point are on this slide right now are things that were brought up by both New Hampshire and West Virginia. And they apply really well to the integration process. One of the things that both states talked about was how the data stewards really hold a lot of that institutional knowledge, particular knowledge of the data and the processes. Bringing that now into a larger context when it comes to integration, perhaps even beyond just a program area collecting data, if it's the collecting or within their own data system where they may be doing reporting out of that, but bringing that into a larger context. And bringing with them a lot of the hands-on experience that they've had with the data, including the reporting requirements themselves, data quality issues, the pain points. All that is really important to bring to the table during integration, and it's really important that that's part of the discussion, because the hope is that integration will help improve the data quality and also help alleviate some of those pain points. So bringing those to the table is really important. And the stewards are often directly impacted the outcomes of integration. It would impact their day-to-day work, and so having them at the table is really important. Jeff had spoken of just moments ago that the stewards can often bring not only issues but potential solutions. So having that experience, that background at the table is really important during integration. So right now is developing a data integration toolkit based on data management best practices, and it will be released later on this spring. And it's a sample roadmap of a number of steps and tasks that are part of a typical data integration effort. And in support of those tasks, there are lessons learned, there are templates and resources that will help SAs through those tasks or accomplish those steps. A number of the steps within the toolkit, as we were looking through that, a number of those steps really involve the steward. So we just wanted to take a little time to just highlight what some of those steps are, where stewards may be involved in the integration process. So what New Hampshire and West Virginia talked about is how data stewards are really integral in defining data elements. And integrated system, that takes it to a little bit different level. I know when I think back of my experience in developing an agency-wide student record system, and then on when we created a data warehouse. When it came to defining data elements, first there was just defining what elements needed to be a part of that system, and coming to consensus in terms of what those definitions might be, particularly if there was overlap for what used to be disparate systems. I remember sitting around in a room with folks from school finance and special ed and our Common Core data coordinator, accountability. We had some Title I, Title III, our coordinator, a number of folks that were all sitting around the table as we would talk about various different data elements and try to make sure that whatever our new definitions came up with, that was something that meet the needs of all those different program areas. And if they couldn't meet the needs, that we noted that and we noted why. I mentioned communication is really important, and stewards are often that point of communication, going back to their own program areas, bringing information back and forth, and also among agencies, and that's particularly true with some of the early childhood. If there's integration from early childhood systems that may be integrating in with Part B, that could be a different agency, and that data steward may be that point of contact. We had to do, in the integration efforts that I was involved in, really beginning to identify what is our authoritative source, particularly if we were collecting the same element in a number of different places, or and that would either be when we were creating a new collection, is this now coming into the new collection, or most particularly when it came to developing our data warehouse. What is the source for each piece of data? And that was discussions, again, that happened with folks from many different program areas. It was something that in the past we had more siloed collections. We could be just kind of doing our own, but not much bigger basis. And that whole process, we were looking for opportunities to reduce redundancies, part of that. Some additional responsibilities was making sure that, and I can't remember who it was who said earlier, it was Gretchen saying that we want our stewards to speak up in the meetings, and particularly when it comes around to identifying reporting requirements and the timelines, making sure that that is very much a part of the process. Comes to integration, making sure that those requirements are still able to be met, making sure that the timelines for reporting are still able to be met, and that's particularly important with the IDA data, and particularly important with times and accuracy being part of how the data is evaluated from OSEP and part of the determinations for agencies. Documentation. Documentation is often thought of as an afterthought, but it's really critical, and it's critical, and integration provides a great opportunity to make documentation part of the process. I know that was some things that we did in Wisconsin, is we kind of made documentation as part of the process as opposed to something that we did after the fact. And sometimes with integration process, that can be updating existing documentation to now reflect the changes with an integrated system, or it could be creating new documentation. And that new documentation can be to reflect the new environment, or it also could be new documentation that right now all the knowledge just resides in somebody's head, and it's a matter of getting it down on paper. I believe both states talked again about data quality checks and accountability for the data, and that is especially true with innovation. Some of the if a program may have had control over a collection before, but now that it's an integrated system, maybe that other an IT department now have control or have some of the control over that. And even if the steward no longer has some of the direct control over the data, that responsibility for sign-off and validation of data is still really important, particularly as either bringing the new systems together or putting it together into a data warehouse, making sure that the values are what you're expecting them to be, and really being the one to be able to know that data and sign off on that and say, yes, that's okay. And stewards play a big role in terms of promoting and modeling the appropriate use of data for others in their agency. But at some of the challenges during the integration process itself, and one of the comments that's come up a number of different times is that for many folks, data stewardship is really just an add-on to already responsibilities that a person already has. The other things that we've seen through earlier slides from both states, and just the slides of the last two slides in terms of the responsibilities that a steward may be a role in integration, is that you can see that there's a lot of work, and it could really change the scope of work that a steward may have, or some of their responsibilities during the process of planning for and then implementing a new integrated system. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. It's especially important for supervisors and leadership to be aware of, because it may be something that it may be worth considering looking to see if there are ways to shift some responsibilities off that steward's plate to be able to free up the time to really spend time, a lot of those collaborative efforts, coming to consensus, working on the data definitions and the validations and all of that, be able to allot the time that's needed to do it well and to do it right. Other challenges post-integration is just adjusting to a new data environment, particularly if one is used to getting their data a particular way and used to doing that for their day-to-day work. There's a challenge not only of learning the new system, learning a new way to get that data, but then also communicating that with our stakeholders and other users of the data who have been using that in the past. And the things that stewards are often playing a big role with. And the final challenge is sometimes just getting used to new decision-making processes, particularly if a system or a collection or repeating a data system was in a silo before. There may not have been as much structure needed for making decisions and making changes, and often with integration there comes those new structures. So that may require some more communication, more collaboration. It may involve more process, and it may involve a little bit more time. And even with that, we know that data integration is it's a lot of work, it's hard work, and yet the benefits that we talked about at the very beginning in terms of consistency of data across systems and a really common vision for data use across an agency, it's well worth the challenges, and it's also good knowing, good into it, that there are challenges around that.
Tiffany, that's all very good information. We would like to ask this question again. Put the answers to it, if you can, in the chat box. What other responsibilities have data stewards had during integration efforts in your agency? Are there other challenges that they face that you'd be willing to share? Put that information in the chat box. We'd appreciate it. And if you have any questions for Tiffany based on what she talked about specific to integration and data stewards, we'd like to hear from those here now. While you're at that, I'm going to move us forward to what we have as next steps. I'm going to turn it over to Erin Petrillo, who's the co-lead for technical assistance in CIID. To get the conversation started, we are going to conduct another poll. We would like to ask you what support you would like to see CIID provide around data stewardship. Vicki, if you'd go ahead and post that poll. To do it, please answer the questions and then be sure and click submit when you're done so that we can see answers. You can see there are choices to make about supports, and then if you have other ideas, you can type them in, click submit, and we'll be able to see them.
And I think we're really looking for the different forms of TA that would be most helpful and relevant to you and your work, as well as all related to data integration, but certainly related to the content from the webinar around data stewardship as well. We will really know what would be the most helpful in terms of the types of resources that we could collect from your colleagues to be able to share and potentially archive for you and make available, as well as other subjects, or if there are specific states or colleagues from the field that you would like to with or hear more from. We certainly would like to hear from you on that. So again, if you second to fill out the question, that would be great. And so, as you can see on the screen here, the CIID TA at core.com. If you have any additional specific requests or an issue that you're struggling with in your state that you don't necessarily know how to answer, but you are struggling with it, have had as a challenge in the past, feel free to just email that box. Whether you have a lot of detail or not, we're more than happy to jump on with you and talk through different ways that CIID or our colleagues in other OSEP centers could help you, or you have potential resources that you think other states would find helpful as well. To use that email link to reach out to us, and we'd be to jump on a call or talk with you via email when your call.
Thanks, Aaron. We appreciate that. We also like to provide you with some information about some helpful resources that are out there specific to data stewards and data managers. These will be available through the recording of the webinar. You'll be able to access them again that way. And we would also like to provide you with some contact information about our presenters today if you would like to get in touch with them again. We'd like to remind you that access for the recording will be available on the CIID website as soon as we have processed that. And there will be an evaluation that you're going to be sent immediately after the webinar to be able to give us some feedback on your experience and how you felt like it went. We thank Aaron, Tiffany, and our state folks, Gretchen, Georgia, and Jeff, for helping and participating. They provided some great information. And again, please don't hesitate to contact us if you would like to receive some technical assistance from CIID around your integration efforts. Thank you very much, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon.